Um, Yikes. We are going through a tremendous change in the federal system. There's no question about it. And working with the CSC, we're seeing those changes coming rather rapidly. The federal government, of course, is expanding a lot of our institutions across the country, including our region here. In anticipation that there'll be more offenders coming through the system. Obviously, there's new legislation that's being put forth in the House of Commons with regards to violent offences, with regards to other areas, and those will definitely be affecting our prison system, federal prison system, with an influx of offenders. I'm not here to defend that or agree with that, but I can tell you from working with the CSC what our perspective is with regards to addictions. There's no question that the offender population in our federally prisons, we're looking at about an 80% substance abuse rate with our offender population, which is really, really high. One of the things we have to recognize is that how much funding do we have within our prison system to deal or intervene or engage in interventions with these offenders. One of the critical how we distinguish between how we can help the offenders as best as possible is, one, we try to look at their index offense. Was the addiction or the reliance on substance abuse a contributing factor? And we take it from there. We have an integrated, holistic approach to the interventions that we can possibly offer. We do have chaplaincy, we do have psychology, we do have correctional programs. We do have outside volunteer agencies that participate in the federal system to rehabilitate the offenders to the best of our ability, so that that we can release the offenders back into the community. One of the keys is, and this is where we kind of have a lot at play, where we have tremendous pressure from the public with regards to public safety, to ensure that high risk or moderate risk offenders are able to function in the community, and to ensure that public safety is not jeopardized. Having said that, I think one of the keys is that with regards to the federal system and having done the practical part of interventions with offenders, I can tell you from my perspective, I see great successes in many cases where our cognitive behavioral approach to our interventions is very successful. With regards to the concept of addictions, I would say that I probably agree more with Dr. Maté than I disagree. We might have a little bit of a difference in philosophy with regards to how our interventions take place. Where Dr. Maté mentions about the childhood being an integral part, I don't think I disagree with that. There are instances in the lives of the offenders, perhaps, that they use the substance or the addictions as a means to cope. However, one of the things that the Correctional Service does try to do is we try to focus on the now. What's happening now with the offender? What cognitive thinking behavior is happening now that led to the index offense? Balancing that with public safety, balancing that with ensuring that the offender is able to go back into the community, and rely upon his management plans, rely upon change, or rely upon a different way of dealing with this crime process, with the high-risk situations. That's where we kind of try to look for success with the offender going back into the community. We look at the cognitive behavior. We look at the thinking that's at stake right now that led to the index offense. What can we do with that approach? How can we substitute? How can we look at other ways of coping with some of the pain, if you will? How can we look at or think about or distinguish those harmful beliefs to alleviate them so that the offender can realize that those behaviors are causing the consequences that are resulting, such as the index offense. Along with that, we have to understand that the interventions departments across the country are very, very, very small pie for funding. We make up out of the $2.2 billion budget dedicated to correctional programs, to Correctional Service of Canada. The interventions departments are allocated 1.8 to 2%. So do we have the resources to do the job that we probably need to do to work with the offenders? I would say no. However, with the limited resources, we have to think about what would be the best way of making sure that the high-risk offenders, the moderate-risk offenders, are able to successfully go back into the community. Another aspect is that in no way does the Correctional Service of Canada think that we have a permanent, solidified solution to the offenders' addictions. It's a work in progress. Evaluations, successes, areas we need to work on are constantly happening, and I think you know, we've made some strides in using the interventions with the offenders, but we have a lot of work to do. We're piloting different programs. We're looking at different structures of our organization to ensure that psychology, chaplaincy, volunteer organizations, how can they play a greater role in working with the offenders in all areas to ensure that some of these problems with addictions that are appearing, that we can help them cope better. And the other thing that we have to mention here is that you know, we're seeing shorter sentences with the offenders. We have limited time to work with the offenders while incarcerated, but we're relying on a continuum of care model. We try to work with the offenders as best to our abilities while incarcerated, but we're also relying upon a great deal of the community to ensure that the resources, the support is evident in the community to make that link with the continuum of care. We have, like I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of work to do still with regards to really solidifying what would be the best approach in our federal system. We are currently piloting a correctional model in our region, which is a much more of an integrated, holistic approach, because we also recognize that substance abuse alone does not cause the index offense. It might be with regards to hostile biases. It might be with regards to associates. So there's a lot of play with why the offender ended up in the federal system. So we also recognize that we can deal with the substances, but if the offender doesn't deal with the hostile biases or incorporate the appropriate social skills or recognize that the associates are causing a lot of the predicament that the offender is facing, then we've done a little bit of the work, but we need to do a lot of the work. So recognizing with the limited budget, how are we going to approach that, where we have so many different domains that we need to deal with? We have to move towards a holistic, integrated model of correctional programs. And then after that, you know, using the other resources within the institution and also in the community once the offender is released. Someone mentioned earlier about the opiate guidelines in the federal system. We offer methadone, opiate, to alleviate some of the heroin or other addictions that might be of that nature, to help them cope, and then also work with them to ensure that they can successfully reintegrate back into the community. In conclusion, with the correctional system, I don't think I can say with certainty that within the system that we have the right approach, or we have the answer to dealing with the addictions in the incarceration period. But I think that with the limited budget that we have, perhaps we're making some strides, and we're trying to work with whatever we have, constantly changing, adopting, to ensure that the offender's needs are met. Our previous programs that we did run, we did see some successes. I mean, the Correctional Services Canada programs are well recognized around the world. Sweden, Denmark, United States, Great Britain, a lot of the countries have adopted a lot of our models as a means to dealing with the offender population. Our past substance abuse programs resulted in strides where new offenses decreased by 45% and violent offenses decreased by 63%, with regards to those offenders that participated in those programs. Our violence prevention programs had lower results, but quite successes as well. So it's a work in progress. We continually try to use whatever funding that we have to make sure that we have a solidified approach and evaluating, trying to ensure that the offender needs are met at the right time, at the right place, and based upon a risk-need philosophy. We'll see what the next years brings, because we are going to be having an influx of the offenders. And we're hoping that with the influx of offenders, we will have additional resources to ensure that we continue, from our perspective anyway, that people that work in the institutions with regards to addictions, with regards to helping the offenders, meeting their needs, and to ensure that they are successfully reintegrated back into society, that we have things in place.
Thank you, sir. Great brother.
Well, it's both, I think, deal with some of the issues I'd like to deal with. First of all, I guess I'm more optimistic, probably because I'm older than you.
Yeah, how old are you?
I'm in my mid-60s. So.
Well, I'm 67, so I don't think...
Well, we're the same age.
I've asked Dr. Maté to provide a few closing remarks. He's very graciously agreed to do that. So, thank you.
You know, I appreciate your comments, but actually I did not hear anybody here say anything negative about correctional officers. In fact, I don't think they were even talked about. And what we're talking about is the system, and the approach and the orientation that the system should take. It's granted that inside any system there'll be all kinds of individuals working for all kinds of motives. In the medical field, there are people who are devoted to fixing other people's problems because they haven't looked at their own. We call those psychiatrists. And inside the correctional system, I've been recently working on a book on bullying, which sanity has prevailed. I'm not going to write it because I don't have time. But one place where a lot of bullying takes place is in prison. And sometimes the inmates are the bullies, and sometimes the officers are the bullies. And like with every other system, I know that I wasn't drawn to work in addictions for accidentally. There's many motives where any of us do what we do, and partly I was drawn to work in addictions because I had my own addiction issues. And then very often I recognize myself in my clients, even though their addictions are much less respectable and much more socially reprehensible and certainly carry a much greater cost, but the dynamics were so similar. It's the same in prisons. Some people go there for mostly positive reasons. Other people go there because they were traumatized themselves, and they're in denial of their own trauma. And I suppose what I'd like to see happen in the correctional system is not just training about clients, but also programs that allow the people working in the system to look at themselves and to look at what happened in their lives and what their motivations are. And when people do that compassionately, they have more compassion towards others. And really, if I have to sum this up, it really comes down to this, that we live in a society that's highly judgmental. We have certain criteria of success, we have certain criteria of acceptability, certain criteria of beauty, certain criteria of what we should be like. And the people that meet those criteria are deemed to be successes and are considered to be models. And we're quite judgmental of the people that don't meet those criteria. And that judgment that we impose on others really is a projection of the judgments that we all impose on ourselves. And the lack of compassion, the humanity that you talk about, the problem is not people's lack of humanity towards others. It really comes down to our lack of humanity towards ourselves. And in the final analysis, and the person talked about restorative justice in the schools. I mean, in my book, I talk about the need for prevention of addiction beginning not even in the crib, but at the first prenatal visit. That if we treated pregnant women with compassion, in the United States, which has got the harshest drug laws and is at the forefront of the assault on drug addicts around the world, they have 5% of the world's population, but they harbor 25% of the world's jail population. The land of the free has many more people in jail per population than any other country in the world. The average maternity leave in the United States is 6 weeks. It's a country that treats its population with utter lack of compassion. And the result is that people don't develop, and I'm not blaming the government for it, I'm saying it's a societal, cultural, social problem. The key is compassion. The key is compassion for ourselves. And when that opens up, the compassion for others flows automatically and openly. And you know, we can talk about policy and we're talking about priority. It really comes down to this. Do we see ourselves as we see others? Do we treat ourselves compassionately? And do we open our heart of compassion to others? If we do, the solutions are very straightforward in terms of transformation and possibility. The sky's the limit. And to the extent that the schools and the social structures and the institutions and the places of employment and the laws are not based on compassion, to that degree we're creating and perpetuating suffering. Thank you.
Nothing more to be said or to be done. Our thanks to Dr. Maté and to our panelists, Ray Corrado, Baines, and Tim Durant. Thank you.